Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago, in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they love hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think, many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall, as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet, and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdies' shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago. This is Lolong, the largest crocodile ever found, stretching about 20 feet long. Now, imagine living in a world full of Lolongs, only with longer legs and the ability to run on land like a greyhound. It sounds like a nightmare monster, but she was real. Fossils of giant crocodile-like creatures were discovered back in the 1930s, and now scientists have found that these beasts once roamed and dominated lands far bigger than they imagined. We're talking about the cebicids. They're a family of prehistoric crocodiles that once ruled South America, especially in what is now Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. And scientists discovered that these ancient predators were huge. Some species may have grown up to 20 feet long. Now, to give you an idea of how big that is, well, that would be you, and that would be her. Yeah, good luck outrunning that. Oh, by the way, they wouldn't be slithering in the water. They'd be walking right beside you. And that's actually the biggest difference between them and their crocodile relatives. Most cebicid species lived entirely on land. They were like lions, powerful, moving on all fours, but with tough crocodile-like skin. That image alone is already terrifying. But it gets worse when you figure these guys were fierce predators and we could have easily ended up as part of their dinner. Everything about them was perfectly built for the chase. They had narrow, dinosaur-like skulls and long legs that helped them sprint after their prey. They especially liked sloths and rodents, but honestly, with those sharp saw-like teeth, well, anything that crossed their path didn't stand much of a chance. And if one of their victims tried to fight back, well, that would have been a big mistake. Most of these crocodile ancestor species had tough, bony plates under their skin that worked like natural armor. They were seriously tough, but don't worry, you don't have to fear them. Luckily, for us at least, these beasts aren't roaming the earth anymore. According to Jonathan Block, a paleontologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History, these mysterious predators may have been the last of the Nodosuchians, a broad group of reptiles that first appeared back in the Jurassic period. Yep, these bad boys shared the planet with dinosaurs. That is, until the asteroid hit the Earth about 66 million years ago. Dinosaurs went kaput, and mammals took over. They became the land animals, but their path to the top wasn't exactly smooth. They still had to deal with the Sebasids in South America. That's right. Those tough crocodile-like predators actually survived the asteroid disaster. They also ruled and stayed at the top of the food chain until around 11 million years ago. Or at least that's what scientists thought, until they started finding strange fossilized teeth in the Caribbean. Uh-oh. Let's go back about 30 years when researchers uncovered two roughly 18-million-year-old teeth in Cuba. They had a tapered shape and tiny sharp serrations, perfectly designed for tearing into meat. There was no mistake. Scientists were looking at something that belonged to a top predator. But the question was, who? Had they found a fossil of an ancient giant croc? Well, maybe. Those teeth could have been from a species of Sebasid, but that was strange, since scientists didn't think such large ancient predators ever lived in the Caribbean. And things got even stranger when another tooth turned up in Puerto Rico. This one even older, about 29 million years old. But there was a problem. Those teeth alone weren't enough to identify a specific animal. They needed more, so the mystery remained unsolved. Everything changed in 2023. Local work crews were building a road in the Dominican Republic when they suddenly stumbled upon ancient bones. Researchers soon realized they were looking at a fossilized tooth, but this time it came with two vertebrae. That was a big deal, because it's really hard to tell ancient crocodile species apart just from their teeth. But with those two vertebrae, things were different. Crocodile relatives with serrated teeth usually had ball and socket joints between their vertebrae. But in Sebasids, that part of the spine was flat, so that made all the difference. It was enough to confirm that the fossil from the Dominican Republic belonged to a Sebasid. And just like that, scientists discovered that this ancient predator really did live in the Caribbean. And even more surprising, they found out it was roaming around at least 5 million years before Sebasids were thought to have disappeared everywhere else. Okay, but why is finding their fossils in the Caribbean such a big deal? Or better yet, why were scientists so sure before this discovery that they didn't live there? Well, that's because this prehistoric reptile didn't like the sea. Let me explain. The Caribbean is a region in the Americas made up of islands and the surrounding coastal areas. That meant for a land-loving ancient crocodile to travel from, say, Colombia to the Dominican Republic, it would have had to swim. And I mean really swim. We're talking over 350 miles of open ocean with strong currents and rough waves. You can see why that would have been a serious challenge for a land-based Sebasid to cross, right? So, that's why scientists thought these prehistoric crocodiles could never have lived in the Caribbean. But now that researchers are finding their fossils there, they may have to find an explanation. And that is where this discovery becomes even more interesting, as it actually supports the Garlandia hypothesis. This idea first appeared in 1994. It suggests that millions of years ago, the movement of Earth's tectonic plates caused a stretch of land, now mostly underwater, to rise up in the Caribbean. This land called the Aves Ridge may have connected South America all the way to Puerto Rico, and then to other Caribbean islands like Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. So basically, it worked like a temporary chain of land bridges, a kind of natural highway that once allowed animals to go from South America to the Caribbean. Mammals, amphibians, and reptiles could actually walk right across instead of taking their chances at sea. The Garlandia hypothesis definitely sounds fascinating, but it's still up for debate. It hasn't been fully accepted by scientists yet, even though plenty of studies since the 90s seem to back it up. And this new discovery of a giant crocodile-like creature in the Dominican Republic could be one more important clue pointing in that direction. It's possible that many of the places where these cibicids once thrived started to disappear as the global climate cooled. Bit by bit, some of them were pushed into warmer tropical areas, until, eventually, the only places left for them to live were the Caribbean islands. This discovery lines up with something else that ecologists have observed around the world. Islands can act like museums of biodiversity, in the sense that they offer a safe place where plants and animals can keep surviving long after their relatives on the mainland have disappeared. In the case of cibicids, the difference is striking. The most recent fossils found in South America date back between 10 and 12 million years ago. But the tooth and vertebrae found in the Dominican Republic are much younger, only about 4.5 million years old. That means this island might have been the last place these giant reptiles called home. And if those serrated teeth found on other Caribbean islands also turned out to belong to cibicids, that would be huge. That would mean that these ancient crocodile-like creatures didn't just live in the Dominican Republic. They were spread across the Caribbean. And who knows, maybe we'll still find more of its fossils in places like Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Jamaica. Although the tropics are among the most biodiverse places on Earth, much of their natural history remains a mystery. Discovering a giant ancient crocodile in the Caribbean is a reminder that the world we live in today is just one chapter of Earth's long, ever-changing history. And who knows what other prehistoric crocodiles or ancient creatures are still waiting to be found beneath our feet.
It's a perfect summer day. You're relaxing on the beach, dipping your toes into the cool water, when suddenly, bam! A 56-foot aquatic nightmare rockets from the waves. It's the size of 2 London double-decker buses, sporting about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including bonus chompers on the roof of its mouth, because why not? This aquatic beast isn't picky about its diet either. Sharks? Turtles? Other sea monsters? Yep, they're all on the menu. Meet the Mosasaur, a group of marine reptiles that ruled the oceans millions of years ago. If you've seen Jurassic World, you'll recognize them as the stars of that epic moment when a massive creature leaps out of the water to snatch a great white shark like it's sushi. That's a Mosasaurus, and it's every bit as terrifying as it sounds. Recently, scientists stumbled upon a fossil of one of those marine monsters in, of all places, Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi, the land of magnolias and catfish. Turns out it's also home to ancient sea dragons. This discovery was a happy accident. A team of geologists was mapping the terrain in east-central Mississippi when they noticed something strange poking out of the ground. It wasn't a rock or seashell. It was a vertebra. And a massive one. In fact, it was so large it barely fit in the hand of the scientist who found it. The fossil likely belonged to the largest known species of mosasaur, the Mosasaurus hoffmanni. Now, the biggest mosasaur ever found clocked in at a staggering 56 feet long. This new specimen hit a solid 30 feet at least, and while it might not break the world record, it certainly makes the crown for the biggest mosasaur ever discovered in Mississippi. Fun fact, that's still longer than the average RV, and with way worse gas mileage. To be fair, the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science already had a couple of mosasaur fossils in its collection. But this newcomer might just steal the spotlight. And this isn't an isolated incident. In 2015, paleontologists unearthed the skull of a 24-foot-long mosasaur in North Dakota. Years later, a private fossil hunter, yes, that's a thing, found an equally huge mosasaur in Texas. Well, its jaw at least. These sea monsters, also known as sea dragons by the way, actually have one of the wildest origin stories in paleontology. The very first skull was found way back in 1764 in a chalk quarry in the Netherlands. And at the time, scientists thought it was a whale. Then came a second skull, which was so impressive that French revolutionaries literally looted it during the siege in 1794. Legend has it they swapped it for 600 bottles of wine. Doesn't sound like a fair trade to me. That fossil actually helped pioneer the concept of extinction and got paleontologists buzzing for centuries. Since then, mosasaur fossils have popped up all over the world, like ancient scaly celebrities leaving their mark. From the Mississippi backwoods to the deserts of Morocco, from New Jersey to Belgium, scientists have uncovered everything from teeth to full skulls, sometimes even misplacing them in museum drawers for centuries. So what exactly were these terrifying titans of the deep? Well, let's just say, if ancient oceans had a most likely to eat everything in sight award, the mosasaur would win it. Picture a gigantic scaly torpedo with a mouth full of about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including some growing on the roof of its mouth like dental overkill. It had a long, muscular tail for propulsion and 4 paddle-like limbs that worked like turbocharged oars, letting it cruise through warm, shallow seas like a reptilian speedboat. Scientists believe they were close relatives of modern monitor lizards and snakes, which honestly just makes both of those animals way more terrifying. Some mosasaurs even might have had adaptations for sensing vibrations in the water, allowing them to detect movement from a distance, similar to how sharks use electroreception today. Their eyes were well developed too, giving them sharp vision in the dim ocean depths, a key advantage when hunting fast or elusive prey. But what really makes mosasaurs the stuff of prehistoric nightmares is their attitude. They were apex predators, and they knew it. Those sea monsters weren't picky eaters. Fish, turtles, birds, sharks, other mosasaurs. Basically anything that moved was dinner. Fossilized mosasaur stomach contents prove they practiced family dinner in the most metal way possible. If they were around today, your beach day would be a lot more exciting. Probably shorter. These guys were so intense, they dominated the whole world. It's safe to say, mosasaurs were the undisputed rulers of the late Cretaceous oceans. And like today's orcas or great white sharks, they probably used ambush tactics, sneaking up on prey from below before striking with explosive force. Bite marks found on the fossilized bones of turtles and even other mosasaurs suggest intense underwater battles worthy of a blockbuster movie. But how did one end up in Mississippi of all places? Well, rewind the clock about 80 million years and you'll find part of North America underwater. A vast shallow sea known as the Western Interior Seaway split the continent in two, running from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. It was warm, teeming with life, and yes, crawling with sea monsters. This prehistoric seaway was a watery wonderland. Imagine long-necked plesiosaurs gliding through the water, birds with teeth diving for fish, and oysters the size of car tires clinging to reef-like structures. Even giant fish like this weird guy over here called it home. This ancient inland sea stretched over 600 miles wide in some places, but it was no more than a few hundred feet deep, making it ideal territory for predators like mesosaurs to thrive. The shallow depth also meant that their prey had few places to hide, turning the seaway into a prehistoric buffet. But the Western Interior Seaway wasn't a permanent fixture. As the Rocky Mountains rose, the seaway slowly disappeared. Over millions of years, it transformed from a shallow ocean to swamps and then to dry land. Today, what was once an ocean is now the Midwest, complete with cornfields, cows, and the occasion mosasaur vertebra hiding in the dirt. Now, this wasn't exactly the end of the mosasaurs. Sadly, even these monsters couldn't outswim extinction. Those massive sea beasts met their watery grave around 66 million years ago, when Earth got an unwelcome visitor, a 10-mile-wide asteroid. When that space rock slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, it unleashed destruction on a planetary scale. The impact triggered massive tsunamis, set forests ablaze, and shot so much debris into the atmosphere that sunlight was blocked out for months, maybe even years. This impact winter plunged Earth into a deep freeze. With sunlight gone, plants couldn't photosynthesize, and the food chain collapsed like a house of cards. On land, plant eaters starved, and predators like T-Rex soon followed. About 75% of all species on Earth disappeared. But don't think the oceans were a safe retreat. The seas were hit just as hard, if not worse. First came the mega tsunami that devastated marine life along coastlines. Then, the real villain arrived. You see, without sunlight, phytoplankton, those tiny microscopic plants that serve as the foundation of the marine food web, perished. With them went zooplankton, small fish and filter feeders. And when the buffet dried up, the big predators like the mosasaurs went hungry. No food, no future. With plunging temperatures and ocean acidification, even the ocean's top predators couldn't survive. Mosasaurs, along with plesiosaurs and ammonites, were wiped out in the blink of a geological eye. So ended the reign of sea monsters. The good news is that you can now swim at peace knowing that no sea dragon will ever come at you. I mean, it's a bummer that they went extinct, but let's be honest, beach days are way more relaxing without 56-foot lizards crashing the party. The Loch Ness Monster is actually not from Scotland. Turns out, this real-life creature lived in the freezing waters of Antarctica about 70 million years ago. In 2019, researchers discovered fossils of a huge, prehistoric marine reptile that looked a lot like what people described as Nessie. This beast was terrifying, measuring up to 36 feet long with a massive giraffe-like neck. It also weighed around 15 tons, which is about the size of 3 elephants. Next up on our list of huge animals is a penguin. I know, penguins aren't exactly what you'd call big, but scientists have just found what they think might be the biggest penguin ever. The Kumimamu fordici. It's believed that these giant birds were hanging around New Zealand about 55 million years ago, and they were huge, weighing over 330 pounds. That's about 5 times the size of the emperor penguins, which are considered the largest penguins alive today. Now, let's move on from massive creatures to something much smaller. Meet B. manfredschmidti, a great ape that lived around 12 million years ago in what is now Germany. This creature is very special, as it's the tiniest great ape ever discovered. And when I say tiny, I really mean it. These ancient animals only weighed about 22 pounds. They were basically no bigger than a super chunky cat. If you think small creatures aren't scary, wait until you meet the electric blue tarantula. This newly discovered species from Thailand's mangroves has an almost otherworldly electric blue color. Its vibrant hue doesn't come from pigment, it is actually caused by the unique structure of its hair, which reflects blue light, making it look like an extraterrestrial being. We're going even further now, diving into the freezing pitch-black depths. At around 2,000 feet deep in the Andaman Sea, scientists found a new species of ghost shark, which they named Chimera supape. Their appearance is straight out of a horror movie. They have sleek, pale bodies, frills that look like feathers, and large, creepy eyes. These ghost sharks aren't actually sharks, but they are related, having diverged from their cousins about 400 million years ago. The good news is they're not too scary since they're only a bit bigger than a shoebox. Just when you think we can't find stranger creatures, we come across this ancient amphibian from Brazil. Scientifically known as K. rosei. This newly discovered giant crocodile-like creature lived during the Triassic period, over 240 million years ago. At nearly 10 feet long, it had a powerful jaw, resembling the modern-day alligator. This beast was definitely a survivor since it adapted to the most severe conditions ever seen on the planet. Last year, scientists were tracking the dense Amazon rainforest at night when they found some quirky orange spiders that looked like they were wearing black boots. The team soon discovered it was a new type of giant crab spider. And no, they don't look like crabs at all. They only got their name because, while perched on plants, these spiders spread their legs out to the sides, just like crabs. Do you know that some new species are named after celebrities? Hollywood icon Harrison Ford now has his very own snake, for example. Discovered in Peru, T. Harrison Fordy honors the actor famous for his role as Indiana Jones, an archaeologist with a notorious fear of snakes. Unlike the film's menacing serpents, this new snake species is quite modest in size, measuring about 16 inches long. We also have the Rampholion princei, a small new species of pygmy chameleon from Tanzania that was named after US rapper and poet Prince Iya. He received this honor because of his work raising awareness about global environmental issues. Another celebrity namesake is DiCaprio's snail-eating snake, which hangs out in the shrubs of Panama's forests. This S. Irmelindi caprioi is about 15 inches long and spends its nights on palm fronds looking for snails and slugs. Its round eyes look like glowing coals that can be a bit scary, but overall, the creature is super chill. Even when it feels threatened, it doesn't bite. It just coils up around its head and gives off a really bad smell. Now something a bit more sinister. Meet Venomius tomhardii. Does that name ring a bell? Exactly. This new species of spider was named after Tom Hardy's portrayal of the infamous Marvel character Venom. And all because the black spots on the spider's abdomen reminded researchers of the famous anti-hero. Most spiders of this species were found in Australia at night, sitting in their elaborate webs in forested areas near the coast. When disturbed, these creepy crawlers often hide in silk-lined hollows in tree branches. We've also got something for the Lord of the Rings fans. In the vast and warm waters of the Amazon River, scientists have just discovered a new species of pacu. This fish is a relative of the terrifying piranha, with a plant-based diet and human-like teeth. It was named Myloplus sauron because of a bold vertical black mark on its side, which reminded researchers of the fiery eye symbol of the villain Sauron from Tolkien's epic saga. Wait, is that a tanned capybara or a wild dog? Well, actually, it's neither. This is a newly discovered dwarf deer. This tiny creature, about the size of a basset hound, scurries through the forests of Peru. The combo of large eyes, stocky body, and short legs makes this animal simply adorable. This cute little deer is the complete opposite of what we've got coming up next. This bizarre-looking creature is what we believe the beast of 5 teeth might have looked like. Its fossils, found in Chilean Patagonia, showed that it lived during the age of dinosaurs, about 72 million years ago. This finding is just another piece of evidence that mammals had been roaming around that part of South America much earlier than we thought. Moving from the forests of South America to the deserts of Australia, we come across a sand dragon lizard, known scientifically as Tenephorus tyacalpa. With its sandy color and long, lean body, this lizard looks like it could star in a Dune movie. Discovered last year, this sand dragon lizard blends in perfectly with the hot sands of the Great Victoria Desert in southern Australia. For over 10 years, a large-eyed creature managed to hide from scientists who ventured into the mountains of southwestern China. But not this time. In 2023, the group finally managed to take photos of 7 frogs that didn't match any known species. They're now known as Leishan odorous frogs, a species that grows to be about 2 inches long and has small bumps all over their grass-green bodies. Off the coast of Chile, we have recently found a seamount nearly 4 times as high as the Burj Khalifa. Underwater mountains are usually home to beautiful life forms, like sponge gardens and ancient corals. But this Chilean seamount also hid a creature known as the flying spaghetti monster. It's a rare type of squid with long noodle-like tentacles that make it look like an underwater pasta dish. Including its tentacles, this strange creature can be over 130 feet long. Recently, scientists were diving into the cold waters of the Antarctic Peninsula when they thought they had found an ordinary dragonfish swimming by. But there was something unusual about this one. It turned out that this fish had two darker vertical stripes along its slender body. That's when they realized they were looking at a new species, the banded dragonfish. From bizarre sea creatures to a cute one. In 2017, locals were diving near Kume Island in Japan when they found the skeleton panda sea squirt. This deep-sea oddity quickly won people over with its look because its black spots actually resemble a panda bear's eyes and ears. At least if you have a good imagination. This unusual creature filters water to catch its food, and is yet another reminder of the ocean's hidden wonders.
Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild, very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together, too. A dog choir of sorts, where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906, but on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Well, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree? Scientists have finally solved the Loch Ness Monster mystery. Here's the spoiler, you ready? It's not a real monster. It's probably a dinosaur that survived through the ages, or just a bunch of debris floating on the water. Thanks to many findings on the Loch Ness creature, we have proof of another story to tell you. It was 1933 when a man named George Spicer and his wife were driving along the shores of Loch Ness. That's when they saw something massive with a long neck moving across the road. It looked like a creature straight out of the prehistoric era, a dinosaur-like beast unlike anything they'd ever seen. That was the moment that Loch Ness monster theories started spreading around like wildfire. One of the most famous Loch Ness monster sightings came just a year later, in 1934, when a man took a photograph that became the most well-known image of Nessie. That's the nickname she was given. She? Anyways, the photo, known as the surgeon's photograph, showed a long-necked creature rising out of the water, and for years it convinced people that the monster was real. But years later, the truth came out. One of the men who helped take the photo confessed it was all a hoax. The photo had been staged after all. When the photo was published, it had been significantly cropped. This made the animal in the picture look much bigger than in real life, fueling the theories that the Loch Ness Monster did in fact exist. In the 1960s, one of the first big scientific attempts to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster happened. A research team took sonar equipment to the lake and spent hours scanning the waters in search of evidence of large creatures. What they found was puzzling. They recorded several objects moving deep in the loch, or lake, with no clear explanation as to what it was. Though the team didn't manage to capture anything definitive, this sighting helped fuel the belief that there was indeed something massive living in Loch Ness. After that, research about the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster kept popping up. In 1972, with the help of underwater photography, some researchers managed to capture strange images, which got people's hopes up for a minute. But the truth is, this early research about the Loch Ness Monster was far from conclusive. Now, of course, not everyone bought into the mystical, magical theories about the Loch Ness Monster. Theory 1, from a professor of zoology at Oxford University, has made it clear that the monster is a biological impossibility. Hey, my pediatrician said that about me, too. Meanwhile, he says that no skeletal remains have ever been found in the region. Plus, no fishermen have ever caught anything resembling the creature in their fishing nets. For him, this works as proof that it simply can't be real. When it comes to the famous photos of the Loch Ness Monster as evidence, well, that's pretty simple. The professor offers a more down-to-earth explanation. He argues that these images are either showing floating debris or birds, like cormorants, which have long necks and often appear to be low in the water. When people refute his suggestion, he takes us back to human psychology and explains that people often make mistakes and misjudge the size of things, especially when they just caught a glimpse of it, and even more so when they are hoping to see something specific. Now, many of those alleged photos depict an animal with a long neck and a small head, which has led some to believe that what they're seeing is a plesiosaur, a giant marine reptile that lived 215 million years ago and disappeared with the dinosaurs. The idea of a plesiosaur surviving all these years is a theory that's been around since the first sightings of the creature. But this researcher isn't buying it. He explains that no plesiosaur fossils have been found in the region dating to anything later than 66 million years ago. The idea of a prehistoric creature still lurking in the waters of Loch Ness just doesn't hold up scientifically. Then there's theory number 2, from a British naturalist who has spent over 50 years investigating the Loch Ness Monster phenomenon. His conclusion is a little less dramatic. He believes that most people who report sightings of long-necked creatures are misidentifying other animals. He suggests people think they are seeing a sea serpent. Reports of sightings from the Loch Ness Monster have been around since the 6th century CE, long before they were distilling Scotch whiskey or other explanations. Early reports of these sea serpents describe large creatures with long snake-like bodies and multiple humps. Some say the creatures were as big as boats, and many swore they saw something swimming in the waters. Many of these early sea serpent sightings may have been misunderstandings or exaggerations of normal animals in the loch, like large fish or even swimming birds. They could have been large eels, which are known to live in Loch Ness. These eels, especially when they're moving, might have given the impression of a long, undulating creature in the water. People who saw these eels from a distance, particularly in low light or misty conditions, might have mistaken them for something much more mysterious. Theory number 3 says something else. Nessie is just a series of standing waves. These happen when two boat wakes move in opposite directions, creating a big hump in the water that could look like a creature from a distance. Loch Ness enthusiasts even showed how it works, with footage from Fort Augustus, where a river meets Loch Ness. These enthusiasts had big plans to use drones with infrared cameras and special underwater microphones to search the loch. Now, Loch Ness is massive, stretching around 23 miles long and more than 700 feet deep. So, they thought they needed drones and infrared cameras to put an end to this discussion. But despite everything, they haven't found Nessie. But it's not only the Loch Ness Monster that lacks scientific explanation. There have also been scores of sightings of yetis and sasquatches that no one can really explain. Folks have made movies, dreaming of finding the truth about these creatures. But, according to recent research and evidence, it looks unlikely that we'll ever find definitive evidence of their existence. Science says they can explain Sasquatch sightings, and this is how. Biologists who study wildlife using camera traps, which are set up in remote areas to capture images of passing animals, have long attempted to find elusive species. These cameras detect movement and snap pictures, providing invaluable data on the biodiversity of different ecosystems. As camera traps collect more photos over time, the number of species recorded grows. However, after a while, the number plateaus, suggesting that no new species are being detected. While it's impossible to claim 100% certainty, researchers say that after significant camera deployment, it's safe to say the likelihood of discovering new species, especially large ones like Bigfoot or the Yeti, drops significantly. Camera trap studies have been running for years in regions where these creatures are rumored to live, but so far, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Instead, the supposed proof of Bigfoot or the Yeti often comes from blurry photos or shaky videos taken by individuals who claim to have encountered them. The scientific understanding of biology also makes the existence of Bigfoot highly unlikely. Often described as a great ape, Bigfoot would have had to evolve in North America. However, great apes evolved in Africa, and the only great ape to make it to the Americas is Homo sapiens, whose ancestors crossed the Bering Strait only about 16,000 years ago. This is far too short a time for a new species like Bigfoot to have evolved. While it may be disappointing for these mysterious creature enthusiasts, the scientific evidence points firmly toward the conclusion that creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are more fantasy than reality. After decades of extensive scientific research, it's safe to say that yes, science has solved the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster, and it's pure fiction. So, what do you think?
What's the scariest predator under the ocean? The crocodile? I don't think so. Loch Ness Monster? Please, it never existed. How about the Kronosaurus? Well, it is extinct, but you might be onto something. Let's take a look at what it'd be like if these creatures were still around today. First things first, what on earth was it? The Kronosaurus was a marine carnivore that lived in the cool, high-latitude Eromanga Sea. It covered vast areas of inland Australia between 90 and 120 million years ago, during the early Cretaceous period. Near-complete fossils of the creature were also found near Colombia, which is a country that has a noted connection to prehistoric reptiles and turtles. This fact makes it extremely possible that the monster I'm about to describe existed worldwide. You might have heard saurus and thought, oh, it's a dinosaur. But these were actually reptiles. They were the largest member of the Plesiosauridae family, referred to as plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they weighed over 20,000 pounds and were roughly 30 feet in length. Just to put that in perspective, the longest crocodile ever measured was a saltwater crocodile by the name of Lolong from the Philippines. It was 20 feet in length and weighed just under 2,500 pounds. And that's still 10 feet shorter and incredibly lighter than the average Kronosaurus, making the crocodile seem like nothing more than a glorified goldfish in comparison. Despite its terrifying length, the most physically daunting feature of the Kronosaurus was its head. Its skull was about 8 feet long, which was actually proportionally large given the size of its body length. Anything that was unfortunate enough to end up inside the Kronosaurus's mouth may have been given false hope. After all, the teeth of the beast weren't actually that sharp. On second thought, I take that back. I wouldn't feel confident around a toothless snake, let alone being inside the mouth of this monster. But it's true that the Kronosaurus's teeth weren't sharp, especially when compared to other carnivorous reptiles, such as crocodiles and alligators. The teeth of this prehistoric sea creature were instead conical. This means that they were cone-like in shape. Unfortunately, this lack of sharpness didn't make them less dangerous. The teeth were enormous and could be up to 12 inches long from the crown tips to the bottom of the roots. This obviously meant that the Kronosaurus had an extremely powerful bite. It was estimated to be up to 30,000 newtons, which is almost twice as powerful as the bite of a large saltwater crocodile. Because of the bluntness of their teeth, they weren't suited for twisting their prey once in their grasp. But the size and shape of the teeth made them perfect for simple open and shut biting. They would have had no problem crushing hard objects such as the toughest of shells any sea turtle could offer. Just like crocodiles, the Kronosaurus is believed to have had a short neck. This may have been an adaptation to allow the beast to successfully catch small, evasive animals. Their body, in general, was fusiform and streamlined. This means it was narrowed at both ends and had very little resistance to the flow of water. The Kronosaurus was also equipped with 4 paddle-like limbs. The hind limbs were larger than the front ones. They could span approximately 7 feet in diameter. All in all, this set the Kronosaurus up to effortlessly propel itself through the waters and be an ultimate predator. Predator X, if you will? That's the name that was given to the fossil of a creature discovered near Svalbard, a Norwegian island group, in 2009. The fossil was identified as a 50-foot-long, 100,000-pound monster with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch. This might be the highest bite force of any known animal. Although Predator X is yet to be classified as any specific type of animal, it was definitely a plesiosaur like the Kronosaurus. And even if it wasn't Predator X, the Kronosaurus was still most definitely a ferocious titan when it roamed Earth's oceans. The Kronosaurus actually got its name from the Greek mythological figure of Cronus, the father of Zeus. Cronus was viewed as a titan from a generation of super powerful beings. So what was it that the Kronosaurus, this terrifying monster, actually feasted on to satisfy its appetite? This creature was known to eat sea turtles, squid, and other larger marine reptiles of that time, such as elasmosaurids and ichthyosaurs. This suggests that if crocodiles existed in the realms of the Kronosaurus, they too might have turned into lunch for the beast. There's evidence from the fossil remains of the Kronosaurus that suggests that they also feasted on sharks, which I know is a disappointment to those of you who view that beast as the king of the ocean. Not when the Kronosaurus was around, my friend. In any case, grounding all kinds of food into small pieces to help digest them would have been difficult without small teeth. This explains the presence of rounded stones found in many of the remains of these sea creatures. Researchers believe these stones may have been swallowed to control buoyancy or to help process food. It's also entirely possible they were accidentally swallowed while feeding on other animals from the seafloor. As if the Kronosaurus even needed to be a meanie with its already existing power and size, there's also evidence to suggest that it indeed might have been. It turns out that after using all its impressive attributes to catch its dinner, the Kronosaurus first liked to play with its food, like a cat does with a mouse. I guess since the hunt was so easy for them, they needed to get their fun from somewhere else. Well, I think now you should have a good idea about these creatures. So let's ask ourselves what it would be like if they were still around today. And by the way, why aren't they? Well, the Kronosaurus was completely finished off by the same KT meteor that took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But even before this catastrophic event, they were coming under increased pressure from an even bigger and more vicious family of carnivorous marine reptiles known as mosasaurs. You can't always be a top dog, I guess, or rather, top marine reptile. But what if this never happened, and they were still roaming Earth? Well, this might be obvious, but can you imagine what kind of impact that would have on sea tourism? Based on the impact that famous movies about sharks and killer whales had, what do you think the presence of a Kronosaurus in the ocean would do to beaches? The very creature that would eat sharks and whales for breakfast. Beaches would certainly become a great place to go for a quiet walk, because nobody else would even be there. And what about such activities as boating, surfing, and scuba diving? You think anyone would dare try them, knowing that this 30-foot beast could be lurking beneath them? Let's give humans some credit and assume most of them wouldn't. This would cripple the global sea tourism industry, which is responsible for earning roughly $143 billion every year. Just to make sure this shocking point hits home, the most expensive yacht to ever roam the ocean was called the History Supreme. Its master bedroom was believed to have a statue made of T-Rex's bone and a wall made of meteorite rocks, as well as a 24-karat gold panoramic wall aquarium. Anyway, this yacht was worth nearly $5 billion, meaning you could buy 38 of them with the money lost and potential damages to sea tourism caused by the Kronosaurus. I'm sure that the yacht's owner was happy the beast never made an appearance in their luxurious aquarium. So luxurious, in fact, that some people believe the History Supreme, reportedly owned by some business genius from Malaysia, never even existed. Rumor has it that it was simply an elaborate hoax fabricated by the supposed designer. Anyway, I don't think the trouble would just stop there. People could actually be in serious danger, regardless of being near the ocean or not. No, I'm not about to tell you that this thing would grow legs, adapt to living on land, and start picking us off one by one. At least, I hope not. I'm just going to point out the damage that the Kronosaurus would inflict through its devastating impact on sea trade. In America, ocean transit accounts for 76% of national trade. On top of this, more than 100 vital pharmaceutical products originate in the sea. I'll also state the obvious and point out that the ocean is a huge food source for us humans. The presence of the Kronosaurus could have a great impact on our relationship with the ocean, something we usually take for granted.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Prehistoric the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was, but they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Prehistoric wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life. You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly, the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples. That's the average length of a hippopotamus, 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous, which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called Megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail, which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter. How heavy is the largest living snake? How can a snake eat a whale? Get ready, I'm about to answer these questions. Before the last ice age, giant mammals like mammoths ruled the world. The modern animal kingdom we're familiar with was shaped around 55 million years ago. I mean, there were still 1,000-pound bear dogs living from Asia to America. But modern whales, for instance, began to appear later. I'm saying modern whales because, surprise, surprise, whales weren't always fully aquatic. The ancestors of the ocean's biggest animals once walked on dry land. They had 4 legs and lived on the coast. Now, I want to introduce you to a snake that used to eat these whales, the Paleophis, a genus of a marine snake. Scientists say it's hard to understand how big the Paleophis was due to its fragmentary fossil record. They assumed that it could have reached up to 40 feet long. Its fossils were found in different parts of the world, from England to Morocco and Virginia, USA. The Paleophis is extinct now, and sea snakes today are only about a quarter of the size this majestic creature used to be. So no need to worry about this underwater monster. But there once was an even bigger snake, the Titan boa. It was around 50 feet long and most likely weighed over a ton. It used to live in what is now known as northeastern Colombia around 60 to 58 million years ago. Scientists say that it mostly fed on fish. Another giant animal that lived in the past was the black Gigantopithecus. These primates aren't related to gorillas. They lived in the area of modern China. Some people believe that they're still alive, but so far, no one has laid eyes on them. Some people even go further and say that the stories of Bigfoot or Yeti are based on these animals. This rodent became extinct about 2 million years ago. Its main habitat was South America, more specifically, Uruguay. What's astonishing about this species is that it was the largest rodent ever known. It was bigger than a bull. Scientists believe that it weighed up to 1,000 pounds. A distant relative of this rodent is still alive today. It's called the pacarana. It's a rare animal that lives in South America. It weighs up to 33 pounds and measures up to 31 inches, not including its cute and fluffy tail. The Arthropleura was an insect that lived in prehistoric times. Imagine a giant millipede measuring up to 8 feet in length. Here you go. It was one of the largest land animals of its era, about 315 million years ago. The Arthropleura's shell was covered with tough plates. These plates were there to protect the creature from damage. Most of the time, it burrowed into the ground to avoid becoming some other animal's dinner. Meet the megalodon. Millions of years ago, this shark lived in the ocean and ate other marine creatures. It had wide teeth, and its jaws were so powerful that the animal could finish off its prey with the force of its bite. It was one of the largest sharks to ever exist. Yet, this predator also went extinct. Scientists don't really know the reason. This made me wonder why animals were so big in the past. Nowadays, smaller creatures flee or hide from predators. But apparently, it wasn't like this before. Many centuries ago, animals didn't just run or hide, they fought back. Research suggests that this behavior may have been the most important motivation for prey to grow bigger. A study compared the skulls of ancient animals to those of their modern peers. The skulls of predatory animals have become shorter and narrower, while the skulls of the animals they hunted have become longer and broader. This means that predators learned to become experts in hunting, while prey worked on developing their defense skills. You see, a larger body size was a great advantage because it made it harder for predators to take down the animals they hunted. The bottom line, self-defense made prehistoric animals larger. The second reason why ancient animals were larger is related to their bones. They had hollow bones, which are lighter than solid bones. This type of bone allowed large animals to move quickly. Let's take sauropods. They were a dinosaur subgroup. Sauropods had giraffe-like long necks and snake-like long tails. Compared to their body size, their head was really tiny. But since their bones were quite light, they could move around without having to carry additional weight. The eating habits of these animals were also related to their body size. When experts examined the fossils of one extinct mammal species, they found out that these animals had a diet that was high in nutrients and low in fiber. And this mammal was the largest land animal of its period. In other words, following this diet, mammals could grow to be very large. There was plenty of food out there, so they didn't have to worry about finding it. Fun fact, these animals also took chewing out of the picture. They could swallow their food in large pieces instead of taking small bites. Environmental conditions also played an important role in the evolution of larger animals in prehistoric times. Those animals tended to live in warm, moist climates that provided them with a lot of food. They didn't have to compete for food sources. Researchers believe that because of these conditions, natural selection worked in a certain way. I mean, body size was more important than such traits as agility and speed. Oh, and did you know that large animals tend to produce more carbon dioxide? And ultimately, a bigger volume of carbon dioxide increases the amount of vegetation in the animal's habitat. As for the abundance of oxygen in the atmosphere at that time, it could be another vital element for some animals' growth. A good but scary example of an animal that benefited from the high levels of oxygen can be the cockroach of the Paleozoic era. At that time, cockroaches were the size of modern house cats. Now this one would give me the chills if I ever faced it. Ugh. What about today? Well, there are over 3,000 species of snakes on Earth. The smallest snake in the world is the Barbados thread snake. It's only around 4 inches long when fully grown, and the largest one? It's the reticulated python. This snake reaches around 20 feet in length. The longest python was discovered in 1912. It measured 32 feet long. As for the largest and heaviest reticulated python, it was named Medusa. Medusa was approximately 25 feet long and weighed 350 pounds. These reptiles lived in Southeast Asia in rainforests, woodlands, and grasslands. Don't be confused though, the reticulated python isn't the heaviest snake in the world. This title belongs to the green anaconda. It weighs approximately 500 pounds. Green anacondas are found in South America and Trinidad in damp, humid areas. I have a bonus for you. Here is a flying snake. You can find these snakes in Southeast Asia. They don't fly like birds, of course, but they do use the power of flight. They can go as high as 300 feet. They leap from tree branches into the air. Once they take off, it's all about aerodynamics. Their main technique is flaring their ribs and pulling in their abdomens. While airborne, they undulate from one side to another and slightly up and down. This motion helps snakes to turn and glide. Why bother with all this if they can just crawl in an old-school way? Scientists aren't sure, but they believe it might be related to escaping from predators. This way, they move from one tree to another without having to get down to the ground. Every now and then, people discover fossils of animals that lived millions of years ago. These ancient discoveries continue to capture our imagination. Which of these animals would you like to see alive? What do Paris Hilton and Chris Hemsworth have in common? Well, apparently, they both want to bring animals back to life. But we're not talking about making your favorite pet live forever. Nope. These celebs are actually helping a science company bring back animals that no longer exist, like the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and even the iconic Dodo. If everything goes according to plan, these fascinating creatures could be walking among us again by 2028. This groundbreaking effort is led by a company called Colossal Biosciences. At this very moment, they're working on a way to revive the core genes of animals that disappeared from Earth ages ago. The idea is to replicate those genes using DNA from a close living relative. If that's all Greek to you, don't worry. We'll break it down a bit later. So, the mammoth is one of the animals they plan to bring back, and people are especially hyped about it. These incredible, massive creatures roamed parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America until about 4,000 years ago. Some people might mix them up with modern elephants, but there are some key differences. For starters, they had huge curved tusks that curled inward and were used to dig for food. They also adapted to survive in freezing climates, like having 2 layers of thick fur to keep their blood warm. But mammoths and elephants do have a lot in common. The woolly mammoth shares 99.5% of its genes with its closest relative, the Asian elephant. That's huge because it means that mammoths are genetically closer to Asian elephants than Asian elephants are to African elephants, for example. The company's bold plan is to create a living, walking elephant-mammoth hybrid that looks just like the ones that used to roam the planet. This animal will look like, walk like, and even sound like a woolly mammoth. But most importantly, it'll be able to live in the same ecosystem that the mammoth left behind. If the scientists succeed in bringing back enough of these creatures, one of their big goals is to help restore the Arctic tundra ecosystem. But how do they actually plan to create the mammoth? Here's their plan. First, they need to find well-preserved samples of woolly mammoths in places like Alaska, for example. Then they'll need to sequence the mammoth's genome and the genome of its closest relative, the Asian elephant. The next step is to identify the important genes that made the woolly mammoth perfectly adapted to cold temperatures, like its shaggy hair, curved tusks, and dome-shaped cranium. In other words, they need to identify which genes make the mammoth, well, the mammoth. Now comes the interesting part. They will use top-notch gene editing tools, kind of like scissors, to cut the Asian elephant DNA and replace those spots with the mammoth sequence. This will allow them to create a new cell line and, later, an embryo. This embryo will grow inside a healthy female Asian elephant, who will be the surrogate. And just like that, a new, cold-adapted elephant will be born. Or at least, that's what scientists hope. Specialists predict that this Mammoth 2.0 could be on Earth as early as 2028. The reason it will take a while is that their gestation period is around 22 months. But if that deadline feels too far for you, there is actually a chance we could get a surprise a lot sooner. That's because some of the other animals they plan to revive have a much shorter gestation period, like Australia's thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. the company is also doing whatever it takes to give this animal a second shot at life. And the good news is that the process seems to be well advanced. Recently, the group announced that the Tasmanian tiger's genome is about 99% complete. This animal was native to the Australian mainland and the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. A big part of the Tasmanian tiger population disappeared over 3,000 years ago. But about 5,000 of them kept roaming around until pretty recently. It's believed that the last thylacine passed away in 1936. To revive the Tasmanian tiger, scientists first need a sample of the ancient animal. So they took RNA molecules from a 110-year-old preserved head that had been kept in ethanol. The team was really lucky because it's rare to find old samples that are so well preserved, allowing scientists to use advanced DNA analysis techniques. And by that, I mean they did a full, complete analysis. By studying RNA samples from important tissue areas like the tongue, nasal cavity, brain, and eyes, experts were able to learn a bunch of interesting things about the Tasmanian tiger. They could figure out how its brain worked and also what this beast could smell, see, and taste. By the way, these semi-nocturnal animals had a special appetite for small rodents, lizards, and birds. After finding the perfect sample, the process of reviving it will be pretty much the same as with the mammoth, but with an elephant as a DNA donor, of course. In the case of the Tasmanian tiger, its closest living relative is a small marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. Even though this animal is small, it is a ferocious carnivore. So experts believe the whole DNA editing process will work just fine with its sequence. Their goal is to turn a fat-tailed dunnart cell into a thylacine cell. To accomplish that, they did more than 300 unique genetic changes into a dunnart cell. So there is no doubt they're pushing all the boundaries to make the dream of reviving animals a reality. This project also plans to revive the iconic dodo. You know, that funny-looking bird from the paradisiacal island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? And here, things get a little trickier, since we don't know much about this creature, which has origins that go back about 23 million years. Basically, the only clues we have about what dodos looked like when they were alive come from a handful of drawings, paintings, and written descriptions from the 17th century. But since those pictures are all pretty different from each other, and only a few of them were based on real, live dodos, we're still not 100% sure what they actually looked like. And as for how they behaved, well, we don't know much about that either. That's why reviving this long-absent legend will be super interesting and really enlightening. The sample they used to extract an old dodo genome came from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And the dodo's closest living relative, which will provide the host cells, is the Nicobar pigeon, a gray bird with colorful features found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. If everything goes smoothly, in a couple of years we might see the fabulous and iconic dodo with our own eyes. Reviving animals might sound impossible, but science and technology together can be a real game changer. Not only by protecting today's animals, but also by restoring species that disappeared from the planet long ago. Actually, we've already pulled this off. A wild goat called the bucardo, also known as the Pyrenean ibex, went extinct in the year 2000. But 3 years later, scientists managed to bring it back to life, using a method pretty similar to what we've talked about in this video. It took 57 tries, but one of them finally worked, and a bucardo clone was born. Unfortunately, the animal only lived for 10 minutes. You might think that wasn't a success, but it was actually a huge step forward in the whole animal revival field. Now, specialists can only hope the project to bring back the dodo, the mammoth, and the Tasmanian tiger go a bit better. When we look at creatures in the animal kingdom, we often have the following thought. If they have similar traits, they must be related somehow. Zebras, horses, and camels must have some common ancestor. Same goes for dogs and jackals. Somewhere back in their lineage, they must have some common great-great-great-grand wolf, right? Well, the way evolution works in nature is way more complex. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, which is when different creatures evolve independently from each other but end up having similar traits. We only need to look at sharks and dolphins to see how this works. At first glance, they look very similar, aquatic creatures with some species having roughly the same size. But turns out they're mostly unrelated. Sharks are fish. They reproduce by laying eggs and evolved to have the ability to sniff out blood in the water to feed themselves. Dolphins, on the other hand, are mammals. They're friendly and have a way more interesting social life. Take bottlenose dolphins, which have their own special whistles that they use similar to how humans use their names. Not only do they develop this type of whistle to introduce themselves to other dolphins, but they can also learn such names so they can better communicate with each other. Sure, sharks and dolphins did have a common ancestor, but this one lived in the sea almost 300 million years ago. It's safe to say, dolphins and sharks aren't even cousins these days. Another more shocking example of convergent evolution is that of whales and bats. Most of the creatures we can name on the top of our heads use light and sight to understand the world around them. But there is a specific set of creatures that relies on sound to paint them a picture of their environment. What they do is they emit a sound which bounces back to them depending on the object it hits. This ability is called echolocation. Animals that have this feature emit sounds at frequencies above human hearing, called ultrasound. Those sound waves bounce off objects while they move around, allowing them to figure out where they are in a certain space. Echolocation is mostly used by toothed whales and by some species of bats. What's similar in both of these animals is that they need to hunt in the darkness. Despite this, they echolocate in very different ways. Bats, for instance, use their throats to generate ultrasound from their mouth or nose. Then, they proceed to listen for changes in the echoes. Their echolocation is so finely tuned that they can distinguish targets less than 0.01 inches apart, even if their target is moving. Whales, on the other hand, echolocate by pushing air through their nasal cavity. This movement creates vibrations in a special fatty organ called the melon. This organ focuses and modulates the sound, which then passes into the water around the whale. Whales then pick up the reflections of these sounds through their lower jaw and around the ears. Another striking example of evolutionary convergence is that of ichthyosaurus and dolphins. Visually, the Mesozoic fish lizards named ichthyosaurus seem very similar to modern dolphins. But the friendly mammals are much more related to giraffes and camels than the ancient creatures. Despite being 200 million years apart, they do share some common traits which mislead people into thinking they belong to the same species. But that's mostly because they lived in the same environment. They both evolved to feature dorsal fins, which keep them balanced while swimming. Now, let's look at Phytosaurus and crocodiles. The first ones were reptiles that roamed the Earth back in the Triassic period. They weren't dinosaurs, but they lived at the same time as the first dinosaurs did. Even though they look very similar, the first crocodiles popped up more than 70 million years later in the Cretaceous period. These two even fooled paleontologists at first. They initially assumed that phytosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles. Placodonts and turtles look similar too. Placodonts, however, appeared about the same time as the dinosaurs did, somewhere around 235 million years ago. Like modern turtles, they lived in marine environments, but they were surrounded by predators. So, they evolved to have really strong shells to protect themselves. Turtles, however, made it to the scene around 100 million years later. Even modern cats have ancient lookalikes. They were called the Sparacidons, but they were carnivores and marsupials. They used to live in the South American area and resembled the saber-toothed tiger, which is now extinct. Speaking of saber-toothed tigers, how about one that's also related to the kangaroo? Yeah, this creature used to freely roam the earth around 300 million years ago. The Thylacosmilus may have looked like a feline, but it was a marsupial, meaning it had a pouch of skin in which it carried its pups for a certain period after their birth, like kangaroos and opossums do today. It's difficult to estimate what they looked like since a full skeleton has never been found, but we do know they weighed between 180 to 260 pounds. When we picture a present-day elephant, we always imagine them with their tusks protruding upwards. Well, that's not how their ancestors did it. About 20 million years ago, there lived a prehistoric elephant-like creature named Deinotherium. It did, however, have both tusks curving down from their jaw. As with many other prehistoric creatures, we don't know why they had this feature the other way around. But one theory suggests they used them as anchors. By securing themselves to riverbanks, they were able to safely sleep without drifting off. The last thylacine passed away in the early 20th century. Their extinction was one of the most tragic natural events in modern times. For the last 2,000 years, they have been known to live only on the island of Tasmania. Despite the name, they looked more like foxes than felines. However, thylacines were marsupials rather than placental mammals like foxes. The two-lake wallaby was one of the most beautiful and majestic creatures ever to have lived. It used to be found in Australia and New Zealand. They were very similar to the kangaroos and featured fine fur with shifting bands of darker and lighter gray across their backs. Surprisingly, they were dubbed monkey face, but they had no connection whatsoever to modern monkeys, apart from both being mammals. What made them so special was the way they moved around. Their standard movement consisted of 2 short hops, followed by a long one. After that, the wallaby would simply stare into the sky. Don't be fooled though, the two-legged wallaby was extremely rapid. Females were generally taller than males, and they appear to have been quite sociable animals, at times being particularly fond of a certain location. They were also nocturnal. Hyracoodonts and horses share a lot of similar features, but hyracoodonts used to exist in the Eocene and Oligocene periods, and they went extinct around 23 million years ago. In their whole group, they featured very diverse species and came in many different sizes, from the small pony-like to the colossal Paraceratherium, which is one of the largest land-living mammals ever to exist. Modern horses, however, appeared around 2 million years ago. Let's do a little experiment together. Start by stretching your arms out. If you were to draw a line from your fingertips to your shoulder, it would measure around 28 inches. Now, try to picture an insect with a wingspan this big. Hold on a minute, you won't need a large can of bug spray, don't worry. They're extinct. But the gigantic Meganeuropsis did live around 250 to 300 million years ago. However, they most likely resembled the present-day dragonflies, despite not being technically related. Scientists figured out that they were not true dragonflies because of differences in the shape of their wing veins. Scientists still don't know why these bugs turned out so big. Some believe insects are limited in size because of the small quantity of oxygen they're able to take in. In the times when these insects roamed the Earth, the levels of oxygen in our atmosphere were much higher, so that might be one explanation. Other specialists think that they got so big because there wasn't any other predator large enough to pick them up from the ground.
So, we all know that Mother Nature is wise. If she blesses some creature with a particular body part, it should make perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, but still, some wildlife shots make you wonder if evolution has gone the wrong way. Snakes' natural design allows them to swallow a whole mouse. But in some cases, this cool ability can turn against them. Yes, snakes can actually swallow themselves. Scientists believe that they mostly do this because of stress, captivity, temperature regulation, hunger, or illness. The snake is pretty helpless in this situation, you can tell. If it doesn't get help in time, digestive juices may begin to corrode the swallowtail. So if you ever catch your pet snake doing this, try to stop it or take it to the vet. Okay, but what about the fangs, I hear you ask? Does a venomous snake have immunity to its own venom? Well, if the snake digests it, it will be okay. It's because protein is a primary component in venom. And besides, the venom is excreted by the gland in the snake's mouth. So no matter whom the snake bites, chances are that it's going to drink a bit. So the only way a snake can actually suffer from its own venom is by biting itself straight into the blood vessel. In this case, it'll experience the same reaction as any other animal. Now, think you're having a bad hair day? Hey, check this guy out. Chris was an Australian merino ram who became a celebrity in 2015 after being discovered in the wild. Farmers shorn him and gained nearly 90 pounds of wool. When the animal was found, he carried over 5 years' worth of fleece on his body. But Chris belonged to the domestic sheep breed that needs to be shorn regularly. Otherwise, the animal is at great risk of injury and infection. So the lives of these cuties depend directly on going to the hairdresser. Shall we talk about horns? Cattle, goats, and many other species proudly wear this fancy headdress not only for fashion, but also as a weapon for brutal battles. If you ask this bighorn sheep ram directly how old he is, you'll probably hear something like, "Bah." But if you want to get a more precise answer, you can count the number of rings on his horns. The biggest and the darkest ring usually marks the 4th birthday, when the ram matures enough for mating. Although animal horns may look very tough, in fact, most of them are made of keratin. It's the same protein that builds human hair and nails. Horns never stop growing as the animal ages, just like our own hair. And eventually, they can curl into really extravagant shapes, making these weapons turn against their owners. This is what a Wiltshire sheep horn looks like when it's young. But as the years go by, the horns typically curl in front of its face. And while most grow out harmlessly, the inward-growing horns can end up dangerously close to the sheep's head. Like this ram who's having bad luck, to say the least. Its horn has slowly grown into its own skull, and eventually, well, it didn't end well for the sheep. Of course, this would hardly have happened on a farm, because people would have made a preventive horn cut. But unfortunately, in the wild, animals cannot use hairdresser services. That's why they use rocks and branches to rub and grind away at their horns to keep them safe, just like humans trim their nails. Faulty genetics is not the only reason for the horn distortion. You see, when males of the species want to fight for dominance, they begin to butt heads to show each other who's the alpha male here. These battles can break horn plates, making them grow at weird and dangerous angles. The fancier the original shape of the horns is, the more problems their fracture may cause. This poor African kudu is a bright example. Fortunately, in some cases, unlimited body part growth can be good for the animal. Just take a look at these adorable smiles. If you happen to break off your own molar tooth, your dentist would probably say it's irreversible and offer a replacement. But if an alpaca breaks its front teeth, all it has to do is wait a bit. Although these animals don't have upper teeth, their lower teeth constantly grow throughout their lifetime, and they might look pretty creepy when they get too long. That's why some farmers prefer trimming them from time to time, just like pet owners cut the nails of their cats or dogs. Now, llamas look so similar to alpacas that many people confuse these two species. But the significant difference between them is that llamas' front teeth are encased in enamel. That's why, unlike alpacas, they don't possess the superpower of limited growth. Too bad. Unlike the keratin horns, deer antlers are made entirely of bone. Typically, only male deers, called stags, grow antlers. Very rarely, females can grow them too due to a serious hormone imbalance. This is a deer equivalent of a beard on a human female that sometimes can appear due to various diseases. Adult deers grow and shed their antlers annually, which coincides with the breeding season. At first, their antlers are covered in velvet, a protective skin with blood vessels. But once the antler is fully developed, the deer gets rid of the velvet, just like snakes shed their skin. Although this process doesn't harm the deer, it may look pretty spooky. Once the brand new antlers are ready, stags begin to fight with other males over the ladies' attention. Usually stags barely eat or sleep during this competition. And if you ever question whether the antlers of two deers can get locked together, the answer is yes. Every stag is risking ending up stuck with his own rival instead of having a romantic night out with a female deer. Bummer. Moreover, all the traumas that the deer gets during the mating season can influence further antler growth if specific nerves get damaged. Just like horns, antlers can develop at distorted angles because of genetic failures. Some mutations can even make them grow monstrously large. This unlucky deer can barely move his head without losing balance. Also, if a deer breaks one of its legs, its body can speed up the healing by sacrificing the bone and blood material from one of the antlers, and thus this antler will get thinner and weaker. And speaking of facial extensions, we cannot skip the tusks. Please meet Babirusa from Indonesia. This ancient boar first emerged over 35,000 years ago. It's easy to confuse these big tusks with horns, but they are actually upper canines. They tend to pierce through the skin of the boar's face as it matures. Scientists believe that these intimidating tusks have evolved as a tool to protect eyes and throat while fighting with other males during mating season. But this design doesn't seem very thoughtful. If a male boar doesn't grind his tusks regularly, they can end up curling back into his own skull, which can blind him or even worse. Now, what if I told you that hoofs can grow out of control just like horns and antlers? It took evolution millions of years to turn the middle toe of the animal's foot bone into the hoof. And just like toenails, they tend to grow and curl into creepy shapes if they aren't cut regularly. When donkeys or horses don't have a chance to wear down their hooves naturally by walking on hard surfaces, they tend to overgrow. This makes the animals walk on the balls of their feet and overstretch the tendons, which may result in pain and bone loss. And eventually, they can lose the ability to walk at all. So if you ever come across a horse with curly hooves, consider calling the experts to give it an emergency manicure. Perhaps one of the most obvious questions regarding the undersea world is, can a fish drown in the water? Yup, it can. Although gills are an amazing gift of nature, there are still many factors that may deprive a fish of healthy breathing. When the oxygen level in the water is too low, fish begin to suffocate. But it happens very rarely in the wild. Oxygen deficit usually appears in aquariums that are not washed and replenished often enough. Also, parasites, diseases, and an overall imbalance in water components can cause the fish to drown. And on that note, I need to hoof it on out of here. See you next time. Meet Costello. He's a Brazilian reef octopus. But Costello isn't a regular octopus. While watching him, scientists began to suspect that he might be experiencing nightmares. When he was sleeping, he was changing colors, making some wild movements, expelling water, and even releasing ink. They decided to study Costello for a while. His behavior during sleep resembled stress and fear. The study showed that he might see vivid dreams, which are, at times, spooky. Well, as just one octopus, these cute underwater creatures are known for their intelligence and sometimes human-like behavior, so it's entirely possible that they see dreams just like we do. In Costello's case, he might be haunted by memories of tough times off the coast of the Florida Keys. Poor Costello has a rough past. He lost a tentacle to a predator before captivity, so maybe that's what he sees in his dreams. If proven true, this discovery could reshape how we perceive intelligence and awareness in both animals and humans. Well, it turns out plants can talk. Well, kind of. Scientists found out that plants actually make ultrasonic clicks when they're stressed. Imagine tomatoes and tobacco plants in a jam. They're making sounds like popping bubble wrap, but way too high for us to hear. These are called ultrasonic signals, and they might be their way of indicating stress. That would mean that plants can communicate with each other, and stressed plants prefer to be drama queens and let everybody know about their troubles. They make around 30 to 50 pops and clicks per hour. Calm and healthy plants don't do nearly as much. And not only do plants talk, but even have their own language. They make different sounds depending on whether the plant is experiencing thirst or is bothered by a snipped stem or something else. Moreover, some of them are so dramatic that they start ringing alarms even before they show signs of dehydration, when they know they're getting close to it. Scientists aren't sure why they do that, though. They believe that it might involve cavitation, a term that means air bubbles dancing in the plant's plumbing. Plants that sing these symphonies include corn, wheat, grapes, and even cacti. That is quite a big discovery in agriculture. We could use it to check if our crops are thirsty and stuff like that. So now we'll be eavesdropping on plants and deciphering their secret language. Okay, time for some universal news. Recent studies are shaking up what we thought we knew about the universe's age. Our findings during the last decades showed that the universe must be around 13.7 billion years old. However, a new study shows that it might be almost twice as old, up to 26.7 billion years. Keep in mind that it's not proven, so for now, the official number stays the same. Scientists were using the time since the Big Bang and studying ancient stars to measure the universe's age. But some stars were playing hard to get, looking older than the universe itself. For example, the ancient star Methuselah, which is estimated to be around 14 billion years old, which would be older than our universe. Also, the James Webb Space Telescope caught galaxies looking super mature just a few hundred million years after the Big Bang. All this poses some hard puzzles for astronomers. But this new hypothesis combines the expanding universe theory with something called the tired light theory. It suggests that light loses energy as it zips across cosmic distances. Combine this with the expanding universe theory, and bam! As the universe expands, the light loses energy, so we simply can't see all the super ancient stars that are very far away from us, which is why we could make a mistake in calculating our universe's age. The new model also pushes back when galaxies started forming. It suggests that those early galaxies spotted by the Webb telescope took way longer to form than we originally thought. This study is a serious shakeup in the scientific community. If we made such a huge mistake in calculations, we'd have to rethink the very fundamental astrophysics principles. That would be a giant leap, and we'd have to make a huge makeover of almost everything. Which is why we need to be very cautious about it. So while scientists test this new theory, we just have to wait for the results. Now, these aren't the only space news. The new AI technology is already being actively used for scientific research. This time, AI is helping us to look for signs of extraterrestrial life. Researchers in SETI created machine learning algorithms that would help us sift through the cosmic noise faster and more efficiently. When you point a radio telescope at the stars, it's like turning into a celestial radio station that's full of different signals. We catch everything from pulsars to radio galaxies and earthly interference. Obviously, it would be pretty hard to identify a potential signal from extraterrestrials in all this mess. For over 60 years, scientists had to do all this manually. It was a daunting task to scan the skies and explore countless stars and radio frequencies. But now, AI came to help. The algorithms are trained to recognize and distinguish known interference patterns, like those from mobile phones and electronic devices amidst the cosmic data. They spot anything deviating from known patterns, the potential needle in the haystack. And we've already had some breakthroughs here. The astronomers caught 8 signals that didn't fit known patterns. While not confirmed as extraterrestrial life, they show that there's a great potential for future research. Going back to animals, this time we're visiting prehistoric Earth. Imagine turtles so massive they make today's turtles look like tiny toys. Recently, scientists stumbled upon the fossilized remains of one of these giants. It's a sea-dwelling titan that cruised the European waters about 80 to 70 million years ago. The discovery was accidental. A hiker in northern Spain stumbled upon fragments of this creature near the Pyrenees Mountains. This turtle was roughly the size of a rhino, around 30 feet in length. Just to give you an idea, this creature would be about the size of an average car. It shows that extreme sizes were more common before an extinction event. The turtles we know now, of smaller, still substantial sizes, dominated afterward. But the ancient oceans were filled with giant turtles munching on mollusks and jellyfish. This discovery also challenges the idea that gigantic turtles were exclusive to North America. The existence of this turtle proves that these colossal reptiles were hanging out in European waters too. So this might be just the tip of an iceberg, and you'll want to steer around that one too. And finally, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has made a great discovery. It detected a crucial carbon compound in space. It's called methylcation, and this tiny molecule, even if it might seem insignificant, could help us unlock the secrets of interstellar organic chemistry. Carbon is incredibly important. Carbon molecules are building blocks that construct everything from stars to planets to, well, us. It's the key ingredient for life, and scientists are eager to understand how it shaped our existence on Earth, and if it could do the same elsewhere in the universe. And methylcation plays a very important role in the creation of complex carbon-based molecules. That's why it's very cool that we discovered methylcation, even if it's very far away. NASA scientists found it in a young star system. This system is chilling about 1,350 light-years away from us, in the Orion Nebula. The star in this system, which is smaller and a bit weaker than our Sun, is bombarded by intense ultraviolet light from nearby hot, young, massive stars. You'd think such strong UV radiation would destroy complex organic molecules. But the research team believes that it might actually kickstart the formation of these carbon compounds. Maybe stronger stars and their insane radiation levels actually work as energy sources for life. They set off a chemical chain reaction, which results in complex carbon stuff like plants and animals. Seems like we found yet another puzzle piece. A piece of whale rib has recently been found in a North Carolina mine. Not a big deal, some might think. Hey, why can't a whale be a miner, right? But this fragment offers scientists a unique glimpse at the interactions between prehistoric sharks and whales from around 3 to 4 million years ago. The thing is, 3 tooth marks embellish the rib. That means that the whale was once badly bitten by an animal with a super powerful jaw. Judging by the spacing between the tooth marks, and it reaches almost 2.5 inches. This animal could be a mega-toothed shark. I'm talking about the megalodon. Or it could be a different shark species which was around at that time. The curvature of the shark's jaw shows that the animal was relatively small, between 13 and 20 feet long. Yeah, small. As for the whale, it seems to be the ancestor of a great blue or humpback whale. Researchers are amazed. You don't usually expect to find evidence of animal interaction and behavior preserved in the fossil record. After examining the sample carefully, they concluded that the shark must have gone away with a mouthful, but the whale had survived because most of the fossil fragment is covered with what is known as woven bone. It quickly forms in response to localized infection. Such bone isn't particularly strong, and later the body remodels it into compact bone tissue. But it takes time. The presence of this bone means that the healing was incomplete and the whale passed away 2 to 6 weeks after the unfortunate encounter. On the other hand, its demise could have been unrelated to the infection and injury. Only a handful of fossils show such kinds of interactions between ancient animals. You can often find bite marks on fossils indicating where the animal passed away and its carcass was scavenged. But this fossil is one of a few examples that not only show a wound inflicted by another animal, but also demonstrate that the prey survived. All fossils are exciting for paleontologists. Yes, they need to get out more. But some might look terrifying to regular people. For example, look at this picture of tentacle arms and octagonal-shaped heads. When it first appeared in mass media, internet users claimed that it was some ancient organism that had come from space. Others thought the story was fake, but in fact, both the picture and the fossil are real. The fossil is known as a mortality plate, a fossilized representation of a mass extinction event of one or several species. The fossil actually contains more than a dozen specimens of a type of marine organism called a crinoid. Despite their looks, crinoids were not plants but marine animals. This particular species lived deep underwater on the seafloor. Crinoids were related to starfish, sea urchins, and brittle stars. These creatures could attach themselves to the seafloor with stalks made up of flexible porous discs connected by soft tissue. The stalks were hollow, and that's where the animal's nervous system was located. Crinoids absorbed oxygen through thin-walled tube feet. The creatures usually reached the length of more than 8 inches and had 5 arms lined with leathery-looking tentacle-like structures. They fed on plankton and sloughed off organic material. Now, even though these fossil finds seem to be super exciting, few creatures in the fossil record confuse scientists as much as the Tully monster. This curious sea creature sported a toothy, trunk-like snout and eyes splayed out on a rigid rod. But the most bizarre thing? It has been impossible to classify. Researchers have been considering a variety of organisms, for example, segmented worms, swimming slugs, and primitive eel-like creatures, since the monster was discovered in 1966. Recently, they have even tried to connect it to some species of jawless fish with a backbone-like structure. A team of scientists from Japan has used high-resolution laser scanners to examine the anatomy of Tully monster fossils in 3D. They concluded that the enigmatic fossil might be an invertebrate after all, and still, the true identity of the creature remains elusive. In the 1950s, amateur fossil hunter Francis Tully found a ghostly imprint of a torpedo-shaped organism with a huge tail fin in the Mazon Creek fossil beds in Illinois. Tully had never seen anything similar to the torpedo structure. He took his find to Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History. Paleontologists working there were baffled as well. Since then, scientists haven't been able to determine where the creature fits on the phylogenetic family tree, or where they should spend Thanksgiving. In 1741, an explorer and captain named Vitus Johansen Bering led an expedition to map the coast of Alaska. The ship he was on got shipwrecked on what later became known as Bering Island, and they got hungry. Half the crew survived thanks to the discovery of an extremely large sea cow. With the meat of these animals nourishing them, the sailors managed to build a small ship from the wreckage and return home. On their way back, a scientist who was among them spent his time documenting the animals and plants they had found. The sea cow was particularly interesting because without it, the crew wouldn't have survived. These animals were more than 26 feet long and weighed around 10 tons. All sea cows are member of the order Sirenia, marine mammals more closely related to elephants than cows. The scientists describe them as having black skin, a small head, and stubby forelimbs. Those sea cows floated on the water's surface, munching on kelp. After the information about these animals became widespread, sea otter fur trading expeditions made use of that convenient depot en route. Sea cows were docile and could be easily hunted. Long story short, within 27 years after the scientists mentioned those animals, they were driven to extinction. But it's not the saddest part. The fossil record reveals a much deeper and darker history. Fossils of sea cows have been discovered all over the world, from Japan to Mexico. It means that the animal once thrived in the vast kelp beds around the entire North Pacific Rim. That small population discovered by the expedition was probably the last remains of a once much larger and way healthier population. More likely, Aboriginal hunting had already reduced the numbers of these animals to near extinction levels, and the final blow came from Western hunters. The living close relatives of those ancient sea cows are rarely hunted today. Still, they're under threat of extinction themselves. To some, this amazing fossil might look a bit disturbing. Slaves' lentils are fossils that belong to animals called nummelites. They lived and thrived in a warm, shallow sea covering part of Egypt around 40 million years ago. The name nummelites hints at the fact that larger specimens resemble coins, and in Egyptian folklore, they're even referred to as angel's money. These creatures have a simple, single-celled structure, which contrasts with their super intricate skeleton. Look at this series of spiral overlapping whorls. Each whorl is divided into countless tiny chambers. Nummelites can grow to be 4 inches in diameter, and still, they are the fossils of single-celled animals related to amoeba. How and why did they grow to be so large? The reason could be their symbiotic relationships with other smaller organisms. In the case of modern species, such symbionts are tiny golden-brown single-celled algae called diatoms. The shells of nummelites are relatively transparent, and since they're flat, there's a large surface area for the light needed for the diatoms to photosynthesize. For some reasons, scientists are still debating about them. The presence of plant symbionts and animals dwelling in the sea encourages the growth of a calcareous skeleton in hosts. So, the gigantic size of the nummulites in Egypt could be due to their close relationship with symbiotic diatoms. Does that make sense? Fun fact: a species of nummulites evolve very fast, and their fossils change from one layer of sediments to the next. So, the limestone used for the pyramids of Giza are so packed with such fossils that it's known as nummulitic limestone. This limestone also contains two kinds of nummulites, the smaller slave's lentils and the larger angel's money. But those are not different species, but rather different stages in the life cycle of a single species.
Poison dart frogs are one of the most toxic species on our planet. They come in a range of bright colors: blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And that's not just to show off. It's a kind of message to all the predators that might want to come after them. I'm toxic, so you better stay away and don't try to eat me. The golden poison dart frog, for example, has so much poison it could finish 20,000 mice. Vibrant colors in nature are generally a sign it's better to stay away from that animal, because it's a warning you're looking at something you definitely don't want to eat. Check a blue ring octopus, another extremely venomous creature. Unlike poison dart frogs or, for example, velvet ants, whose bright colors you see right away, this octopus shows its blue rings only when it feels threatened. With over 300 pounds and 10 feet in length, Komodo dragons are the heaviest lizards on our planet. They will go after almost anything that comes their way, including pigs, deer, smaller dragons, and even more challenging creatures, like big water buffalo. They camouflage and patiently wait for their prey to come closer, lying in the grass. Saltwater crocodiles. Their attacks are more frequent than those of sharks. They have a 3.5 times stronger bite than a lion and 25 times stronger bite than people do. One more superpower: these guys can literally launch their bodies out of water, and they do that with their tails. Hippos seem quite relaxed as they chill in the water, but they're actually pretty aggressive. They attack humans even more than leopards and lions. This guy is small, but it can be as threatening as a huge hippo. Meet the tsetse fly. It lives in sub-Saharan Africa, and travelers that love spending their time outdoors or in game parks should be careful about these insects. It's important to get the right treatment as soon as possible if it bites you. Pus caterpillars look all innocent and fluffy, but you'd better avoid touching them. They're venomous, and these wig-like hairs you see are actually spines that can cause multiple issues if you touch them. Ouch! Vespa mandarinia mostly build their nests underground, so it's trickier to find them. Their sting is like someone pierced you with a hot metal pin. The stinger is long enough to even go through the standard protective beekeeper's gear. The reef stonefish is the world's most venomous fish. There are 13 stout spines in its dorsal fin, and that's how this animal injects its highly toxic venom. Lions. They live mostly in Africa and can eat a quarter of their body weight, about 88 pounds, in a single meal. They mostly hunt at night and during storms because the wind and noise make it harder for their prey to hear and see them. Why hunt if they can just go and participate in some burger eating contest? Tigers mostly inhabit Asia. They're able to survive in different conditions since you can find them in various areas, from mountains to rainforests. As long as they have enough water, food, and cover, they can adapt to anything. Food can sometimes be a problem since they eat up to 60 big animals per year, with smaller ones as snacks in between. Fun fact, their skin is covered in stripes too, not just their fur. A bit of good news here. Wolves aren't really into eating humans. Still, sometimes they do go after people. They mostly attack when they don't have enough food or when they lose their habitat. Sharks have a bad reputation, but they mostly spend their time away from humans, catching smaller fish and other marine animals. Still, they'll defend themselves if you come to their area and they feel threatened. And in that case, their serrated teeth certainly don't look too peaceful. Ostrich may not belong to that list at first sight, but when it's cornered, this animal is perfectly capable of taking down big predators such as wolves and lions. Yeah, sometimes they can be brave, and in reality, they never stick their head in the sand when frightened. We can't forget to mention brown or grizzly bears, which are considered to be way more aggressive than other bears. It's 3.5 times more likely something bad will happen if you encounter them than polar bears. They're also 21 times more dangerous than black bears. And yet, brown bears are the most widespread kind of bears across the globe. When it comes to snakes, saw-scaled viper is definitely one of those you need to be careful with the most, because the consequences of its bite are statistically quite sad to say the least. It has enough venom that even its weakest bite could finish 2 people. Not just saw-scaled viper, there are multiple snakes you need to stay away from. Meet Philippine cobra. It lurks in forested areas, dense jungles, low-lying plains, and open fields. It especially likes areas near water and can spit its venom up to 9.8 feet away. Black mamba too, very venomous, kinda nervous, and when it sees you as a threat, extremely aggressive. It's among the world's fastest snakes, since it can move at speeds of up to 12.5 miles per hour. Australian box jellyfish is the most venomous marine animal in the world. It has tentacles covered in small darts with venom, and they can grow up to 10 feet long. Seeing even a small random spider in your home can be unpleasant, and picture if it was a Goliath bird eater instead, the largest spider in the world, and also one of the creepiest. You'll mostly find them spending their time in burrows with the entrances covered with the web. Luckily, their venom is not that bad to humans. It's like a wasp stinging you. Bad news for insects, you guys should be careful. This spider is a real danger for you. Platypus looks cute and harmless, but despite their funny appearance, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Australia. They have spurs located on their hind legs, and each of them is connected to a crural gland by a duct. And this gland creates a complex mixture of hundreds of toxins. Ugh! They have 2 layers of fur for waterproofing and insulation. With their fur, platypuses trap a layer of air right next to their skin so they can remain dry when they're underwater looking for food, which is about 12 hours a day. One of the stings you'll definitely feel the most is from the bullet ant. They're small, and their stinger is only up to 0.11 inches long, but it can still leave you with several hours of burning sensation. Pufferfish are poor swimmers, so they're most likely to end up as lunch for larger fish. But when they sense danger, they ingest big amounts of water together with air, so their body inflates like a balloon. They can puff up to even 2 to 3 times their regular size. A single pufferfish has enough toxin to finish 30 humans. The African buffalo is the only species of wild cow you'll find in Africa. You can recognize it for its heavy, rigid horns, and this, in combination with its massive size and aggressive nature, makes them very dangerous for whoever stands in its way. Elephants will respect your space most of the time, but only if you respect theirs. They can feel threatened by, let's say, a group of tourists that come too close and disrupt their personal space. In that case, they'll defend themselves and be very angry, which isn't such a nice scene. Wild dogs can be pretty dangerous, like dingoes in Australia. They can either live alone or move in packs of up to 10 animals, which can be especially tricky for their prey when the entire pack is after it. They can cross great distances and communicate with each other, howling like wolves. A star-nosed mole is certainly one of the weirdest looking creatures you'll come across. In some way, it looks like someone replaced its head with a very small octopus. They're not dangerous to humans in the way some venomous creatures or large predators are, but they can cause a lot of damage in your garden.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. It's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit.
It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Jeremiah, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not. They couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human size, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation. Like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly, as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. Conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, there were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is again the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage, not to mention run-ins with raptors like the frightening Saurophaganix. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner. So they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
When we say extinction, we usually think of dinosaurs that went to lunch with a humongous asteroid and were wiped out from the face of the Earth. We don't think of ourselves possibly going away in the near future. But what we forget is that there have been 5 mass extinctions that our planet witnessed in the last 500 million years, not just one. And we can be nearing the 6th one, where one of the species to possibly disappear are humans. The first great mass extinction came about 440 million years ago in the Ordovician period. Back then, life was mostly thriving in the oceans and along the coastlines. Biodiversity was great at the time. There were thousands of different species, trilobites, sea scorpions, and all kinds of weird-looking mollusks, and even fish. You name it, Ordovician had it. But then, the temperature around the planet started to drop. The overall warm climatic zones became colder and colder, until the oceans got covered with thick sheets of ice. Most of the marine species weren't ready for such abrupt changes. Imagine a trilobite serenely crawling along the bottom of the sea and suddenly bumping into a glacier. Yeah, it's like living your entire life in a beach bungalow, only to find yourself in an igloo one day. The event was dubbed Late Ordovician Glaciation, which led to Late Ordovician mass extinction. Over 60% of all species that lived in that period disappeared. Only ancient fossils were left for paleontologists to discover hundreds of millions of years later. Nobody still knows exactly what caused the temperature drop at the time. The main theory is that the CO2 levels in the atmosphere fell sharply. It led to cooling down the entire surface of Earth. but the reasons for such a collapse are still under debate. However, that wasn't the worst mass extinction event in the history of our planet. Despite more than half of all living creatures being wiped out, biodiversity on Earth restored itself in the following 5 million years. Life went on until another catastrophe struck. Within the span of 20 to 25 million years, from about 375 to 350 million years ago, several extinction events occurred. They were like pulses that damaged a lot of marine species. Arthropods, like scorpions and mites, lots of various fish, including sharks, all were in decline. Overall, more than 75% of all living beings disappeared back then, who were mainly in the oceans. The reasons for such events are even more unclear than those before the late Ordovician mass extinction. Most scientists now believe those waves were caused by changes in the sea level and a lack of oxygen in the oceans. A lot of plants quickly moved to land and adapted to living outside of water. And since they were the main source of oxygen in the ocean, all those fish and sea scorpions were in for a very unpleasant surprise. The booming growth of plants on land also removed much of the CO2 in the atmosphere and enriched it with oxygen instead. This led to an abrupt temperature fall again. And although no new ice age followed, many land animals couldn't adapt to the new conditions. The bitter irony was that the major part of them had just recently crawled out on land from the ocean, looking for a better environment. Ah, well. This was only the first wave, though. The reasons for the second one, that came about several million years later, are still unknown. Scientists think there could have been mass volcanic eruptions, or even meteor strikes, but those are just hypotheses. Then another 100 million years passed without much trouble. Species rose and fell, evolved and disappeared, but the cycle of life continued until about 250 million years ago, when the third mass extinction event occurred. It happened in the Permian period, the last period of the Paleozoic era, and it was so catastrophic that it had all the chances of becoming the last mass extinction on our planet. Scientists are still unsure what caused so many species to be eliminated. But the fact is that around 96% of all living creatures in the world were gone. One theory suggests that volcanoes started being overly active. They threw millions of tons of methane and basalt into the atmosphere. Asteroid strikes might have added to the damage too. The sky was literally covered in dark clouds of ash. The proto-mammals and reptiles tried to hide from the black and gray mist, but it was everywhere. It was like hiding from the air itself. Another culprit could have been microbes that loved their methane-rich environments. They could have quickly spread in the oceans and literally choked the rest of the marine life forms there. But whatever the reason, the Permian mass extinction event was the most massive and destructive of all the Great Five. All life on our planet could have ended right then and there. But those 4% that persisted eventually spread across the Earth and started a new era. Yay! This time, they lived a peaceful life for only 50 million years. And then, whammo! The fourth great mass extinction hit. It was different though, slowly creeping across the planet over the last 18 million years of the Triassic period. The extinction occurred in numerous short pulses, wiping out several species at a time. A slight climate change here, an abrupt temperature fall there, and very upset animals and fish all around. The main reason for that was again the volcanic activity at the time. Fiery mountains started spewing out ash and gas once more, lowering the oxygen levels and suffocating life. Well, that was harsh. The gases and other substances thrown out of the volcanoes' mouths changed the Earth's climate again. Sea levels rose because of that, and some researchers believe even the pH levels were altered. That means the marine life that used to be swimming peacefully in more alkaline waters suddenly found itself trying to survive in acid. But apart from causing bursts of extinction, these changes also ushered in the era of dinosaurs. It didn't begin immediately, of course. Some species evolved and slowly grew into the mighty animals we've heard so much about. Their extinction was the last of the Great Five, and certainly the most well-known. About 65 million years ago, when dinos were still ruling both land and ocean, an enormous asteroid came from outer space and fell right on Earth. The impact was so powerful, it left a huge crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, and the explosion sent billions of tons of debris into the air. The dinosaurs that lived far away from the impact zone raised their heads and saw black and churning clouds blocking the sun. It remained for years, drastically dropping the temperatures. In addition to the cold that followed, the asteroid hit a carbonate rock that had a lot of flammable material in it. The impact led to an explosion. The chemicals mixed in the air and produced sulfuric acid, and that acid fell down in the form of rains, altering the pH of the oceans. Aquatic creatures that were again used to more alkaline waters went, "Oh, come on!" That didn't help, though. The changes were abrupt and severe. About 75% of all animals and plants went extinct in a matter of years, unable to survive the new, harsh conditions on the planet. But some persisted. Many of them were reptiles, like crocodiles and turtles, which managed to survive even up to this day, looking almost the same as they did back in the dinosaurs' days. Others were mammals, which had lived in the shadow of the mighty dinos and hid from them in dark corners. But now that the giant animals were gone, they began to flourish, bringing in the Cenozoic era, the one that lasts to this day. And today, we might be witnessing the sixth great mass extinction. According to scientists, with the evolution of humans, a lot of different plants and animals have gone from the face of our planet, never to return. The good thing is, mass extinctions have always happened over a span of several million years, so we might still have time to recognize it, prepare, and counteract. What do you think? Shall we? If dinosaurs once ruled the Earth, it seems like we should stumble upon their bones everywhere. But we don't. Why is that? Aren't you curious? There's no conspiracy here. The truth is that the quest to find dino remains is much more complex than meets the eye. Yes, dinosaur bones are real, we found tons of them, and they've already been uncovered on every continent, despite many people arguing otherwise. And the uneven distribution of these prehistoric treasures is simply a quirk of nature. Turns out fossilization is an incredibly rare phenomenon. It only happens under specific conditions. When a dino bites the dust, the journey to fossilization begins. The carcass needs swift burial by sediment, followed by layers upon layers, creating a geological pressure cooker. Minerals sneak into the bones, morphing them into stone. This unique recipe predominantly occurs underwater, where sediments like sand and mud can gracefully cloak the fallen giants. Which is why dinos meeting their end above ground rarely end up as fossils. For example, we barely find any fossils of species who lived in the jungle, and especially in the mountains. Researchers reveal that many fossils arise from areas near lakes or rivers. Whether drowned before a flood or carried away by rain, these dinosaurs lucked out in fossil formation. These are the reasons why we don't discover dinos in every nook and cranny. The harsh reality is that we might never meet many dino species, all because of these limitations of fossilization. Around 71% of dinosaurs will never be discovered. We don't even know how many species we've lost due to unsuitable conditions. If we're super lucky, we might find some fossils of mountain dinosaurs in local rivers, but that's a very rare case. So yes, while dinosaurs graced the globe, all the fossils we found so far were due to great luck. Now, this makes you wonder how much dinosaurs lived in general. There are myths about them leading a tortoise-paced life. People believe that dinos were sauntering through centuries to achieve colossal sizes. Funny enough, the truth is exactly opposite. In reality, dinosaurs lived shortly and shone bright like rock stars. Unfortunately, once these animals hit the prime of reproduction, They often found themselves on the fast track to fossilization before reaching their full-size potential. What's interesting is that dinosaur life cycles align with the rhythm of trees. Perhaps you know that it's possible to determine how old the tree lived by its rings. It's true, each pair of light and dark rings equals 1 year of age. Like the rings tell us about trees, dinos' bones tell us about them. Researchers examine slices of bones under a microscope, analyzing different tissues to gauge growth rates. Thick rings mean rapid growth, and narrow ones mean a more leisurely pace. In the animal kingdom, bigger usually equals longer life. So, some people wonder whether big dinos actually live longer. Apparently so. Large sauropod dinosaurs, akin to ancient behemoths, likely took around 30 to 35 years to reach their colossal peak. Following that, they might have enjoyed a few more decades on the prehistoric stage. For smaller dinosaurs, like the nimble arthropods, life was a swift affair. They grew to their full size after around 4 to 5 years of life. But after a mere 3 to 4 years, these mini dinos, unless super fortunate, might have bid adieu. So it turns out many dinosaurs didn't live for hundreds of years. Most of them, even colossal ones, rarely marked even their 50s. It's a surprise if you compare them to today's giants like blue whales and elephants. These animals boast human life-like spans. Blue whales live for around 80 to 90 years, and many elephants make it to their 60s to 70s. And they're not as big as some dinosaurs. Yeah, it's a pity that they left our planet so early, and we don't have a chance to study so many of them. What's even sadder is that dinosaurs have been doomed from the beginning. Even if a random cosmic rock hadn't hit our planet, dinosaurs would still have gone extinct by today. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into our planet 66 million years ago. For the record, it didn't actually destroy all the dinosaurs, only the non-avian ones. The rest became birds. Yep, some of these colossal creatures became tiny chickens and pigeons we see today. Guess they know what wolves might feel like. But even before that happened, the Earth was slowly preparing a catastrophe for them. Recent research shows that the era before the asteroid impact wasn't exactly a paradise. It was more like a brewing cauldron of environmental challenges. The scientists delved into the Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic regions in present-day West India. They came up with an innovative technique to study the past through volcanoes by measuring sulfur concentrations in rocks. That's how they learned that the Deccan Traps, spewing millions of cubic miles of molten rock, contributed to global climate shifts. Over 100,000 years before the infamous Chicxulub meteor struck, global temperatures might have plummeted by several degrees. This sudden drop was most likely triggered by sulfur emissions from the Deccan Traps. And this, in turn, led to pretty wild, unpleasant climate conditions. The Earth ended up experiencing volcanic winters. This made life super challenging for flora and fauna and set the stage for the eventual dinosaur extinction. So, even if there was no asteroid, dinos wouldn't survive for too long. For a long time, scientists have been arguing whether it was the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs or the volcanic activity. Finally, technology is developing, and we can use it to answer this question. An AI system developed by researchers offers its own perspective. Using over 100 processors fed with geological and climatic data, the AI explored the fossil records and over 300,000 possible scenarios to find the truth. And, according to the machine, the volcanic theory is far more plausible. It told the scientists that the climate changes required for a mass extinction were likely caused by the Deccan Traps alone, even without the asteroid impact. The volcanic eruptions coincided with the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, starting 300,000 years before the asteroid, and it continued for an extended period. This raised some questions about human versus AI judgment. Some scientists expressed skepticism and talked about the AI's potential bias. But the researchers who led the project are excited about the novelty of their method and its potential to explore other periods of Earth history. However, it will likely take some time for humans to build trust in AI. We already mentioned that non-avian dinosaurs survived this apocalyptic event. For some reason, neither volcanoes nor an asteroid wiped out everything on our planet. Many animals survived, evolving into mammals, and many plants continued to flourish. Plants went through this even better than animals, actually. A catastrophe bid farewell to about 75% of Earth's species, not to count all the individual losses. Yet, botanical wonders survived. Around 78% of our plant species owe their existence to their persistent ancestors. Unfortunately, plants don't turn into fossils as easily as animals do, and we already know that this process isn't quick or common either. So the researchers had to turn to evolutionary trees. They analyzed up to 73,000 surviving plant species. The findings revealed a remarkable narrative of evolution and dominance. Turns out, after the Great Extinction, these sneaky plants seized the opportunity, just like mammals who rose to prominence after the dinosaur era. Major orders, like those of mint, magnolia, and orchids, not only coexisted with dinosaurs, but thrived beyond the extinction. The secret to their success lies in how they could adapt for pollination. They didn't care whether they were pollinated by wind or insects or anything else, basically eating resources from anywhere they could find. Thanks to this awesome adaptability, which scientists call flower power, their legacy lives and flourishes today. Ooh, from giant spiders to venomous snakes, we all get freaked out by Australian creatures. Yeah, me too. But newly discovered fossils show that things were way more dangerous 120 million years ago, when this land was completely ruled by massive razor-clawed megaraptors. Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around then. These dinosaurs were about 26 feet long and walked on two legs, just like the famous T-Rex. They were fast, fierce hunters, with a superpower: their hug. Yep, their massive, muscular forearms had huge curved claws, perfect for grabbing and holding onto prey. Uh-oh. They would wrap their arms around their poor victims, just like a hug, and trap them with no chance of escape. And even though their teeth were quite small, they were still sharp enough to rip through flesh. The first time we heard about megaraptors was in the late 90s, when a paleontologist discovered their fossils in the region of Patagonia, Argentina. Since then, no one has ever found a complete skeleton, only fragments. But probably the most important one yet was uncovered in Australia at the beginning of this year. Researchers were exploring Victoria's stunning coastline when they stumbled upon megaraptor fossils. First, they spotted bones from its lower legs and a few vertebrae washed up on the beach. Even though they were working with just a couple of fragments, a deeper analysis confirmed that these belonged to a megaraptor. And not just any megaraptor, it was the oldest one ever discovered. This discovery gets even more exciting because it adds weight to the theory that these dinosaurs might have originated in Australia. But we already knew that they roamed the land down under since early 2023, when researchers found the top of a megaraptor skull in the country. So let's rewind a bit. We first found their remains in Argentina, right? Right. But then, years later, researchers found fossils of the same family of dinosaurs on the other side of the world, in Australia. If the ones in Oceania were older, how did these creatures end up in South America? Of course, they didn't fly there. They didn't cross continents by swimming either, although there is a theory that they could swim. Remember, we're talking about the dinosaur era, which happened millions of years ago. And back then, Australia and Argentina were actually pretty close. Basically, they were one. Both lands were part of the supercontinent known as Gondwana, and they were connected through Antarctica. Wait, but wasn't this path freezing? I mean, yeah, these dinos had to pass through Antarctica to get to their destination, but they weren't freezing their tails off. This all happened during the mid-Cretaceous period, when the weather was super warm. Back then, the poles were covered in plants, not ice. So let's just say they took full advantage of the good weather to make the crossing. Now, about 180 million years ago, Gondwana started to break apart. At some point, Australia drifted away from the supercontinent, cutting it off from other landmasses. including South America. That's why the same dinosaur showed up in completely different parts of the world. Mystery solved. Now, let's get back to that recent discovery. The researchers didn't just find a few traces of megaraptors on the beach. In total, they uncovered 250 dinosaur bones at the site, but only 5 of them were really important. They belonged to 3 different species of dinosaurs that, as it turns out, all lived in Victoria at the same time. So yeah, we've already talked about those first 2 bones. They were from the megaraptor. Next, we have a shin bone from a Onenlagiine. That's my best shot at pronouncing it. It's a dino also known as the southern raptor. This is a type of dromaeosaur with a long snout. And the last 2 shin bones of different sizes came from a Carcharodontosaurus, whose name means shark-toothed lizard. This one is a particularly big deal for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's the first evidence that this species lived in Australia. And number 2, it was small, and that is pretty surprising since we've always thought of this species as being massive. Fossils found in Argentina, for example, show this dinosaur reached a length of about 36 feet. But the one in Australia was much smaller, measuring only around 6 to 10 feet long. And that's still plenty big. Basically, what we're saying is that the way predators were ranked in these 2 parts of the world was completely different. In South America, Carcharodontosaurs grew to massive T-Rex-sized giants, towering over megaraptors and dominating the landscape. But in Australia, it was the complete opposite. There, huge, powerful megaraptorids roamed the land alongside smaller Carcharodontosaurs. So the predator dynamic was different. And all of this just shows how unique the ecosystem in Victoria was back then. Although isolated dinosaur bones have been found in Western and South Australia, most of the fossils come from the eastern part of the country, like Queensland. And there, researchers dug up something really, really rare – a well-preserved dinosaur skull. The study shows that this bone belonged to the 4th discovered specimen of Titanosaur. This group includes those massive long-necked dinosaurs. They look like the Brachiosaurus, but some of them were even bigger, reaching 120 feet long. The skull, discovered in 2018, belongs to this guy, whose pronunciation is above my pay grade, and the research points out that it roamed the Earth around 98 million years ago. Thanks to this find, scientists were able to recreate, for the very first time, what its face might have looked like. Probably after checking out the illustration, they thought, hey, it looks a lot like its cousin. They were talking about another species of Titanosaur, this other unpronounceable guy. And guess where they used to live? Yep, in Argentina. So, this research also supports the theory that dinosaurs crossed between South America and Australia during the mid-Cretaceous period. Now, this wasn't the only secret buried in Queensland, though. In 2024, researchers working there discovered the fossilized remains of a new species of pterosaur, about 100 million years old. These creatures were the first vertebrates that could actually fly, existing alongside dinosaurs. They were massive, powerful predators, with wingspans of up to 36 feet. But these remains belong to a new species within the pterosaur group, which they have named Hakuna Matata, or something similar. Compared to their cousins, they were on the smaller side, with a wingspan of about 15 feet. Still, that's bigger than a snowy albatross, the largest flying bird we have today. This species of pterosaurs were terrifying beasts, flying over the ocean to hunt for prey. Once they spotted their victim, they'd snap open their 60-centimeter jaws, filled with sharp spike-like teeth, and, well, I guess there was no escaping that. The last incredible discovery we're talking about today also comes from Queensland. For over 20 years, students walked past a plain-looking rock at Biloela State High School completely unaware that it held 66 dinosaur footprints, and they date back about 200 million years. These prints were made by a group of these Latin-named guys. They were small dinosaurs with 3 toes on each foot, and it seems like they were all over Queensland around that early Jurassic period. The rock they found at the school worked like a snapshot, giving us a better idea of what these dinosaurs were like and how they behaved. After taking a closer look, researchers found that the footprints came from 47 individual dinosaurs. This group was probably walking along or maybe crossing a waterway when their footprints got marked in the white clay. And the study also discovered that they were likely moving at less than 4 miles per hour at the time. So we only discovered those marks in Australia. But fossils of the same species found in other countries showed that they had these long legs, a big chunky body, short arms, and this tiny head with a beak. But honestly, they don't sound as